Coming up on Tech News Today, Comcast and L3 are battling over net neutrality and peering and backbones. What does it all mean? We have Reid Fishler to explain it all, and we'll try to figure out who's right in this battle. Also, P2P domain name serving. Could that prevent your domain name from getting seized by ICE and aliens? All coming up next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Tuesday, November 30th, 2010. Tech News Today is brought to you by Ford and voice-activated sync featuring true hands-free calling, turn-by-turn directions, 911 assist, and more. Available exclusively on Ford and Lincoln and Mercury vehicles. And by Gazelle, the easy way to sell or recycle the used gadgets lying around your home or office. For a 5% bonus payment for your used gadgets, go to Gazelle.com. Use the bonus code TNT. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
And I'm Jason Howell.
And we have some special guests filling in for Becky Worley today, joining us from the Tech Stuff podcast at HowStuffWorks.com, Mr. John Strickland. Welcome back to the show, John.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
It's good to have you. Also joining us, a TWiT regular, but the first time on Tech News Today, Mr. Harry McCraken from Technologizer.
Hey, Tom. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Harry, and thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
And our first story, we're going to have a special guest helping us understand what's going on between Comcast and L3. Joining us from Hurricane Electric, director at HE.net, Mr. Reid Fishler.
Hello, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here as well. And let's start right in with this. As I understand it, L3 is accusing Comcast of violating net neutrality, and they say the reason is Comcast now wants to charge them to deliver video streaming, and specifically L3 just signed a deal with Netflix. On the Comcast side, they say, we don't care whether it's Netflix or video or anything else. We just know there's going to be a lot more data coming over our network, and that violates our peering agreement, and so we have to meter it and charge L3 accordingly. Is that, do I have the camps right there?
You pretty much have exactly what everyone is saying true. You have everything is right. The question is really who has any basis on to stand on here, and who should pay whom for this traffic.
So explain just briefly for those who don't understand, explain what a peering arrangement is, because we're used to saying, hey, I pay to get on the internet and then the internet comes to me, but the peering arrangements are going on inside of the internet, aren't they?
Yeah, well, what we really like to say is everyone says the internet is really not a thing. An internet is really a network of networks. So basically, in order for Comcast Network or Comcast Internet to talk to Level 3's internet, they sign an agreement called the peering agreement, which is to transfer traffic between the two networks.
And those agreements basically say, you know, as long as the amount of traffic you send to us is similar to the amount of traffic we're sending to you, then nobody pays anything.
Well, they say a lot of various things. Every company has their own different peering agreements and specificities of them. However, in this kind of arrangement, what you're dealing with is somebody who deals with a lot of eyeballs, basically Comcast, and somebody who's dealing with content. So the question is really who should pay when Comcast controls the eyeballs, the people requesting the content? Why should somebody like Level 3 or Netflix or whomever have to pay to get to the people who are requesting the content in the first place?
Right, because when I pay Comcast, I'm paying for every computer that's connected to the internet in the world to send me traffic, am I not?
You are, and what you're also doing is, in this special case, you're also paying the person who owns the wire, who services your house, and also has a vested interest in perhaps some of the content or some of the competing content against what's being served over Netflix.
But on the other side of the issue, you've got L3 saying, we're an ISP, we're going to do a peering arrangement with Comcast, and then signing up to deliver Netflix's video for them. So it's not Netflix connecting to an ISP and then sending their video out. It's what's called a CDN, and you have Netflix's video being sent out by L3, and that's what Comcast objects to, right? It's like, look, you're trying to play both sides of the fence.
Well, that's what Comcast is objecting to, but Comcast also is playing 3 different sides of the fence. Their content, they own the wire, and they're also serving the customer as an ISP. Now, so, you know, in this case, you have everybody being somewhat, you know, partially disingenuous, but isn't that business?
Yeah, exactly. If Comcast didn't own any content, let's say they weren't in negotiations to buy NBC Universal, they had no television channels of their own, let's say they weren't even a cable company, they were just an ISP that served homeowners, do you think they'd have the same reaction?
Well, if there was true competition in the market for every end user, and an end user could say, you know what, you don't give me good enough connectivity to my Netflix, I'm going to go to XYZ Corporation and sign with them and get similar service. But in this case, there is no such similar service. There's either a monopoly or a duopoly of anybody who could provide any speed service to these customers.
I think that sounds like the biggest problem here. It's not, I mean, it's easy to point at Comcast and say, well, they don't want Netflix streaming because it competes with their cable, and that's probably true. But it's really the fact that we don't have a choice to go somewhere else. Maybe Comcast really does think they're getting the short end of the stick. Can you think, I mean, for instance, I got to know you, Reid, at Buzz Out Loud when you were writing in about peering controversies back in the past. L3 has been involved with one with Cogent before. How is that one different from Comcast?
Well, in the level 3 Cogent, and I can't speak to the specifics because I was obviously not involved in that, but those were 2 backbones. Neither of them were servicing end users, and neither of them owned homes, which, I mean, not physically own homes, but own the wires to homes, which is in this case what Comcast owns. Comcast owns the ability for that last mile to get into the homes.
What's the worst that can happen if Comcast gets away with this? Because L3 has basically said, look, they've got us over a barrel. We have to pay the extra fee. And if nothing changes, and by the way, the FCC has said they're going to look into it. They're going to investigate whether there needs to be some sort of regulatory action here or not. But if nothing happens, what are the implications of this? Anything?
Well, the question is can Comcast do this to more different more ISPs? And of course, on the reverse is, do other ISPs or other cable companies figure out that they have to do this in order to compete? Because remember, Comcast also is a ISP themselves. So can Comcast now strong-arm Verizon, or can Comcast strong-arm Cablevision, or Time Warner, or pick your poison? There's now, you start ending up in an arms race where it doesn't end up being pretty.
Is there any worry on the other side of this that if L3 were to somehow get action taken and not have to pay a metered rate, that ISPs could try to act as CDNs, that they could start to try to do this sort of same end around, and that could overwhelm the traffic of a Comcast or a Time Warner or a Verizon?
There's always a possibility that, you know, if government stepped in and regulated things could become so regulated that it no longer became profitable or is possible to do business. And that, of course, is if something came in with a really heavy hand, that's a possibility. But generally, just because somebody requests the traffic and the stream coming back is larger doesn't necessarily mean that the person feeding the stream or the company feeding the stream should be the one paying to get to that end user. It's the end user who made the request in the first place.
I want to bring John and Harry on this before we let you go. Reid, what do you guys think? Harry, do you have a question I haven't asked here, or do you have a comment on how this is going to affect consumers?
I mean, I've learned a lot listening to Reid explain that. He understands it better than I ever will. To me, the thing that's really bothersome is something that seems to be true of a lot of the technologies we're talking about in this show, which is the enormous conflicts of interest. I don't see how Comcast can be, you know, an unbiased, neutral player when it owns TV and its future is so dependent on figuring out what to do as things like Netflix become more and more important. And that's the thing I find deeply bothersome, because they're not just an ISP, they're also a direct Netflix competitor.
And John, what do you think? Is this something that bothers you as well? Do you have any more questions?
You know, this is a really complex topic. I think you guys have covered the foundation really well. This is just something we're going to have to keep our eyes on and see how it develops. I honestly don't think all the answers to this situation are out there one way or the other. So,
is it? And one last question, Reid, before we go. This actually comes from the chat room. It's a really good question from Where's My Socks. He says, is it common for peering agreements to differentiate on what bits they carry? And is that what Comcast is doing here? Are they saying it's your video bits that we're going to not carry unless you pay extra? And is that something that happens normally?
No, not the actual content is not specified. However, sometimes peering agreements have what's called ratios, which means you could only send us 5 times the traffic that we send you, and after that, there's some monetary agreement. But those are really legacy, because most of everybody's connection nowadays, no longer do you have 28.8 up and 28.8 down like the old days with the modem. You might have 5 meg up and 5 meg down and 1 meg up. So the customers no longer have symmetrical connections. So some of those are legacy agreements that have existed forever.
So this is unusual for Comcast to do this, it sounds like.
It's definitely unusual. It's definitely not a usual way. But of course, the internet really is just a bunch of networks who all agree to transfer traffic. There's not any extreme, there's no regulation that requires us to all send that traffic between each other.
Right. Everybody can take their ball or their wires in this case and go home at any time, right?
Yes.
Or I guess to torture the metaphor even further, to block your balls from bouncing through my wires.
Yeah, well, we like to say it fiber, but yes. Yes, definitely.
All right, Reid Fishler, thank you so much. Director at Hurricane Electric. Hurricane Electric, an ISP itself, is that the right term for your? Hurricane
Electric is a backbone ISP. We sell to other networks and CDNs, et cetera, and web hosters. So we're one of the largest ISPs in the world by number of networks that we connect to.
Well, thanks so much for taking the time to help us understand this. You've been extremely helpful, man.
Not a problem, anytime.
And you could
this or IPv6, either one.
All right. Yeah, you know what? We will probably have to call on you for that as well. Hurricane Electric, if you want to find out more about them, is at he.net. You can tell they've been around for a while because they have that two-letter domain name.
That we do.
All right. Thanks, Reid. Let's move on to Google.
Thank you.
Undergoing a microscopic search by the EU, which I think officially makes Google the new Microsoft, does it not?
Kind of, yeah. It's definitely taking that niche of the spotlight in Europe for antitrust concerns.
European Commission announced on Tuesday that it has opened a formal antitrust investigation into allegations that Google unfairly gives preference to its own services over that of competing vertical search services. Leading the charge in this is a company called Foundum. What Foundum does price comparison searches. So for, let's say, airline tickets is one, you will be able to search on Foundum and find out what all the prices are, and then go from there to directly to a Travelocity or an Orbitz or something like that. Foundum is a UK-based service, and what they're complaining about is that when you do AdSense buys or when you do searches, Google doesn't rank Foundum as high as they think they should be ranked, and they think there's something fishy going on. Is this foul play on Google's part, Harry?
Well, if you ask Google, they'll always say that they don't favor their own stuff, and I think they're probably more on the side of the angels in this than a lot of companies, because for the whole history of portals, if you went to AOL back in the day, AOL would totally steer you towards the services that were paying money to be there. I am very curious if there are any instances of Google, pushing something up because it's a Google service, and I don't think they do that, but I do think they sometimes will put in a module, making sure that their service has a high profile. But it's an incredibly slippery slope, because wouldn't every single site in the world like to be #1 on Google for whatever their category is?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And the other thing going on here is Foundum is a search engine. So if they were able to make this argument, wouldn't Bing and Yahoo and Ask also be able to make the same argument?
Well, I think one of the companies complaining actually is a German company that's part of Microsoft. So you already are seeing the giants, fighting about it. And there's I imagine also sort of an angle here that it's this extremely large American company competing against European companies, and I think that's generally an issue when the EU starts to nose around, as it did with Microsoft on browsers.
I think this is bunk, and the European Commission has been clear, quick to say we're not accusing Google of anything. All we're saying is we're going to do an investigation and look into this. I did my own sort of brief study. I did a search for price comparison search engine. And no, Foundum did not come up on the first page of results, but plenty of others did, like PriceWatch, and I can't get the search to work now because the internet's not working for me suddenly, of course. But it's probably being blocked by Comcast or something. But I had tons of non-Google products show up on the page, and in fact, Google's own product search was the second result behind another one that they don't have anything to do with.
I really don't think that they're, rearranging the list of results in any way. They certainly sometimes will try, if you're using one Google service, they will recommend other Google services you might like, but I think they do way less of that than almost any other company that does as many things as they do.
And John, we do have to take into account that Google is a huge monopoly. They have, 90+% share. Does that mean we have to hold them to a different standard, do you think?
I don't think it means we hold them to an unfair standard. I mean, the fact that they have a 90% share may be part of the problem, but like as you said, they're not ranking their own products higher up than everyone else's in search necessarily.
Doesn't seem like it.
I mean, I write for How Stuff Works, and we write a lot of articles about various technology subjects. And Google came out with that product Knoll. You remember that?
Yeah, KNOL. I remember that.
Yes, where you would ask the experts questions, and they would answer them and write an article. Well, you would think that if Google was really stacking the deck, they would put those higher up in search results for for key terms. But we found that our sites were still popping up on first page, which suggests to me that Google was playing by its own rules that they set out with their algorithm, where they're genuinely trying to give the search user the best results for his or her query. So I'm leaning toward believing Google on this one and thinking that this is a case of companies that wish they ranked higher in Google to have their search results appear higher up on the page, and it's not a question of antitrust. It's just a question of, well, if more people used your site and linked to it, it would be higher up. It's just that you're not ranking there based upon Google's algorithm.
But Google's failing. The Microsoft Senior Director of Online Services, Tom Rizzo, in an interview with Computer World, says Google's privacy issues, scanning user data, the difference between consumer and corporate needs mean that he doubts Google can survive a move into the enterprise space. And that's what Google's trying to do with their apps on the domain. He says Google simply does not understand what businesses need and is failing. Do you think that's true, Harry?
Well, I know this is a really sensitive topic for both Microsoft and Google, because whenever I talk to anybody involved with either of them, they get pretty prickly, and Google keeps saying that there are all these large companies that are using Google Docs instead of Office, and Microsoft keeps saying that virtually nobody is doing that. That interview had one bit which I thought was actually true and smart, which was the Microsoft executive said that Google is where Microsoft was 20 years ago, back when Microsoft was still sort of a desktop software company trying to be an enterprise company, and I think Google sort of is there. But of course, Microsoft actually did a really successful job of going from being a desktop consumer kind of company to an enterprise company. So I would not rule out the possibility that Google could do something similar.
And Google's already ahead of the game in antitrust investigations, I think.
They're moving rapidly.
Yeah.
They're going through the whole life cycle more quickly than Microsoft did.
Everything goes faster these days in internet time.
Yeah. Google's definitely spied on more homes than Microsoft has.
As far as we know.
Yeah. I think Harry is absolutely right on this. I think really when you look at the situation, Google has nowhere to go but up, and Microsoft has nowhere to go but down, just from being so entrenched in corporate America, the globe actually. Microsoft really had a stranglehold on corporate services and corporate products. So I think it's a little too early to say that Google is failing.
Of course, it's a Microsoft person. They have to.
It's posturing.
Yeah.
It's posturing.
All right.
I mean, now I don't know that they're doing everything they could do to succeed either, but I think that remains to be seen.
Let's take a quick break. I want to thank our sponsor, Ford, makers of Ford and voice-activated sync. They have a new program called the 2012 Ford Focus Global Test Drive. Your chance to get a sneak peek at the all-new Focus and a trip to Spain. If you haven't heard, the all-new Ford Focus is a 3-model lineup, a 5-door hatchback, a 4-door sedan, a 5-door wagon. Includes the latest parking technologies, such as the very famous at TWiT Active Park Assist and rear view camera, torque vectoring control, which hugs the curves, new fuel-efficient engines, and, of course, voice-activated sync with My Ford Touch, including the 8-inch touchscreen. It's similar to the one you see in the Edge. To get a sneak peek at all of this, submit a video now through December 31st, 2010. If you're selected, Ford will donate $10,000 on your behalf to a charitable cause of your choice and send you and a friend to Madrid to test drive the 2012 Ford Focus at the Spain's National Institute for Aerospace Technology. To learn more and submit a video entry, go to twitfordfocus.com. Tell them what charitable cause you'd like to support in the video. Upload your video to the 2012 Ford Focus Global Test Drive site now through December 30th, or 31st, rather. It's available to TWiT audience members worldwide. Once again, that URL is twitfordfocus.com. And we thank them for their support of Tech News Today. Well, I think we can solve a lot of this problems on the internet by creating an entire alternative to the domain name system. And a lot of people agree with me. Well, actually, I agree with them because I found out about it this morning. But Peter Sund, or Sundy, I don't know how to say his name, formerly of the Pirate Bay, is among many people starting to investigate how to do a third-party DNS after 83 domain names, including torrentfinder.com, were seized by ICE, the Department of Immigration here in the United States. The way this would work is you'd run a piece of software on your computer, and peer-to-peer, it would translate addresses, and you could have any domain name you want.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting approach. It's really decentralizing the DNS system so that you no longer have a centralized point of control, in other words, ICON, which is the Internet Corporation for assigned names and numbers. Taking it out of their control and putting it across a peer-to-peer network, the philosophy here is that you can't just easily come in and remove a domain for any sort of political rationale, or you can't just accuse a domain of engaging in illegal activity and have the domain pulled based upon that. It's an interesting concept. No one really has the technology fully worked out yet. That's actually being hashed out by various.
Well, there is OpenNIC already, which if you change your DNS to the OpenNIC IP address, you can actually get access to a bunch of domain names like .geek, for instance. And I misspoke when I said you could get any domain name you want. It's actually the .p2p domain that they would use through OpenNIC. But then that domain name would not be registered at a central server that could be seized or controlled in any way. It would be, like you said, John, it would be peer-to-peer. Harry, right. do you think this is a viable alternative, or is this just another fragmentation into several dark nets that we've been seeing?
It sounds interesting, although, to be honest, I'm not sure whether I would put my trust for this kind of thing in the hands of the guy from the Pirate Bay. My big question about this whole thing is, why is the Department of Homeland Security worrying about counterfeit goods anyhow? I would think they'd have bigger things to worry about, and it is kind of troublesome to see essentially, the U.S. government using the fact that it ultimately controls this stuff for purposes like that, for law enforcement stuff, especially something like counterfeiting that is not, in the great scheme of things, a hugely serious issue.
And that's kind of the point of the .p2p project. By the way, if you're looking for that, you can find it at .p2p.org. And they say we want to scare back to show the government if they try anything, we have weapons of making it harder for them to abuse it. If they then back down, we win. So it's trying to play on that spending of resources to go after this sort of thing. It's a very interesting project. And even if you're not into the .p2p project, take a look at OpenNIC. as a way to have a third-party DNS server. Richard Branson's got a new iPad app, $3, called Project. It's a magazine, made specifically for the iPad, and it only takes about 7 hours to download an issue, and then you have to read a 7-page manual, and then you can read the magazine. It's pretty great.
Tom, I think you're blowing this issue out of proportion, because it took me a long time to learn to read. So if we're going to be
Harry,
like
did you end up downloading it ahead of time?
I actually have it here, and you know, the fascinating thing about iPad magazines is nobody has figured this stuff out yet. Each one is a little bit different. I don't think anybody has really adjusted to the fact that the resolution is not that high and the page size is not as big as a print magazine. And it took me about half an hour to download Project, and I'm sure it's occupying more of my iPad's memory.
It took you a half an hour?
Yeah.
Wow.
For a while I watched it, and then I lost interest. But it actually is kind of cool. I mean, that they're experimenting. There's video embedded in there. There's a fair amount of interactivity, and I would tend to be kind to them, just because I think it's really healthy that everybody is trying to figure out what a magazine should be like.
I think you're right. I really enjoyed reading the Jeff Bridges article after I spent the time to get into it and figure out how to move around in it. But instead of just reading an article, you have audio clips from the interview they did with him. You have video clips and moving slideshow sort of things. And so it really is, they're making a good attempt at making an enhanced magazine. It's impressive to look at. I just don't know if it's impressive one time or if it's something I would be compelled to go back to over and over.
Well, people keep underestimating print. I mean, print is a really good interface for this stuff, and everybody knows how to use it. And nobody yet has come up with an iPad alternative that's simpler than print.
What were you going to say, John?
I just have a quick question. I don't have an iPad because my wife does not love me that much.
It's okay. It's okay, John.
It's all right. She's enjoying her iPhone 4 right now. I don't have one, so I can't really see what this looks like. I've seen the instruction list, which is pretty interesting and amusing. I just have a question. How is the experience of looking at this magazine app, how is that any different from, say, looking at a web page that has a lot of rich format in it? Like video and sound.
It's quite a bit different. I mean, think of a page out of Wired magazine, which is pretty much what this thing is competing with all of its high-level graphics and integration into print, and then imagine it kind of animated and laid out in a different way. Could you do it on a web page? Absolutely, and people have done things close, but it's actually not really a good layout for a web page. Do you agree, Harry?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely trying for something beyond the web. Like, there are the equivalent of beautiful photographic magazine spreads, but instead of a photograph, there's video going. So they are trying for something different. And again, the nice thing about the web is that there's a fairly standard user interface. And if you know how to go to usatoday.com, you can also go to the NewYorkTimes.com or Technologize or any other site. And within this magazine, even from page to page, the UI varies quite a bit.
Yeah,
which takes some getting used to.
It could be too much, you know. It may be better if it just did have a more web-like layout. We got to move along. I want to talk about Apple forcing a company called PhotoFast to abandon their 256 gigabyte upgrade for MacBook Airs. This was an adapter that allowed you to take out the solid-state drive from your MacBook Air and upgrade it to 256 gigabyte drive. And apparently Apple has asked them to stop, and PhotoFast has agreed because they don't want to lose their third-party licensing here.
Yeah, this is this is weird to me. I mean, it totally falls under Apple's philosophy. I kind of get that. Apple really likes to present products exactly the way they envision, and they don't really want anyone to fiddle with that. In a way, I think of Apple computers being really similar to video game consoles, in the sense that the video game console companies don't want you opening them up and hacking or fiddling with them at all and changing those things out. They have a very kind of limited scope of what they want users to be able to do. And, you know, there's only so much you can do to control for that. But to actually go to the lengths of convincing a company to stop producing a product, or I don't know if the threat was implied or if maybe it was just something that PhotoFast inferred from the situation. It's definitely a little scary.
Harry, do you have any insight into why Apple would want them to stop? Is it something where they could develop a license for this later, do you think?
I mean, I think we have to be a little bit careful in analyzing this, because I don't think we know the whole story, and I'm pretty sure Apple will never explain to the world why it's doing what it's doing. So, it's conceivable there are some legitimate reasons that there could be some problems with the device, but it's very different from the world of Windows PCs, because HP or Acer is not going to be able to call the shots on third-party devices, and you can take any hard drive and stick it in any Windows system, but in part because Apple is innovative and builds its own interfaces for stuff and is the primary distributor for a lot of these products, as well as a company that licenses technology to third parties. It plays a totally different role than any other PC manufacturer, and is able to do this. I would love to know the details, though. I feel like we don't know the whole story, and it might be even worse than it looks, or better than maybe.
Yeah, Ars Technica suspects it may be because Toshiba, which makes the solid-state drive modules that are in the MacBook Air, announced that they're making their drives available to OEMs earlier this month, and it's possible that PhotoFast module violates some agreement between Apple and Toshiba. So maybe it's just a matter of getting this all worked out and getting some timing and some agreements in place. We'll take a look. We'll let you know if we find anything else out about it. All right, let's finish off with a WikiLeaks story, and we want to start our story with a question from a viewer. Take it away, Sky Warnet.
Hi, TNT peeps. Mike Mathia here from Wichita, Kansas. Broadcaster, tech guru, the only one. There only needs to be one. It's Kansas, for God's sake. Anyways, I wanted to sound off about the WikiLeaks controversy. It seems that a lot of people are upset about WikiLeaks leaking out this information. They don't get it. It's not the website's issue. They are just delivering information just like any media outlet would. If you want to be upset at anyone, be upset at the source of the leak, not the website. If it wasn't for the source, then there wouldn't be any information to leak out. Anyways, that's all I have. Hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving weekend.
That's one side of the argument. China's taking the other side. They've just blocked access to WikiLeaks, saying, you know what? We don't want to upset the United States. We have a nice little firewall here. We can just stop everyone from seeing WikiLeaks. Others suspect that the government may be behind the continuing denial of service attacks that are trying to get WikiLeaks down off the internet. They haven't been successful yet. Part of the reason is WikiLeaks has moved their service to Amazon. They're storing the pages that are being attacked on an Amazon server out of Ireland, and there's enough provisioned bandwidth there that there's no issue. There's no problem. It's not coming down. Where do you all stand on this, Harry? We'll start. I want to ask you because you were talking about it a little bit in prep.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I'm a fan of WikiLeaks. I think it just is, and a lot of bad could come out of it because he'll release everything, and a lot of good might come out of it too. But the guy you just showed is right. I mean, if the people to be really upset with are whoever leaked this within the government, and it's really kind of interesting because there was some extremely sensitive stuff in there, and apparently vast numbers of people within our government had access to these, and that's why it's out there. It was not guarded as well as it should have been, and it sounds like it was partially a reaction to the post-9/11 era, because there was a theory that the various parts of our government were not talking to each other well enough and sharing information, and the CIA didn't talk to the State Department, and because of that, they started releasing a lot of information to more and more people in the government, and just very large numbers of people had access to the stuff. And with that being the case, it's not the least bit surprising that it was leaked.
John, do you agree? I mean, do you think there's somebody in the chat room here, Joshua Caleb says, to stop a leak, you plug it, you don't get a bucket. Is what the United States doing more like throwing sponges around, or should they be trying to plug the leak?
Wow, there's a whole bunch of stuff to address. First of all, I think you can say that WikiLeaks has arrived because they got blocked in China. But then I would also say that I don't think the government is behind the DDoS attacks, because if it were, it would come out in WikiLeaks. So what I would say is that... well,
it may still, right?
Yeah, I guess so. We'll just have to wait and see. I think we're looking at a perfect storm here, right? We're looking at a time in United States history where distrust in the government, and not just the United States government, but governments worldwide almost, has reached pretty high levels. And at the same time, we've reached a point where we have this amazing device, the internet, which can allow us to distribute information on a global level instantaneously. It's the perfect storm for this kind of stuff to happen. I'm actually kind of surprised that it took as long as it did. Ultimately, I think what's going to have to plug the leaks, I mean, it's just, you're always going to have people in your system who are going to be disenchanted with what you're doing, even if you feel wholeheartedly that everything you're doing is the absolute best option you have. There's going to be someone there who feels otherwise. I don't think it's realistic to say that you can plug all the leaks. I don't know that there is a solution to this problem other than accepting the fact that we're in a world now where information is going to get out there a lot more readily than ever before, and to have to, really change the way we operate in order to make certain that the information that gets out there doesn't come back to haunt us.
All right, we will leave solving WikiLeaks for another day. I want to take one more break and thank our sponsor, Gazelle. If you've got a bunch of gadgets that are taking up space in your garage, you want to get a bunch more gadgets for the holidays, send them to Gazelle. They will give you money for them in many, many cases. You can actually go online to Gazelle.com, put in the gadget that you have, what condition it is in, and they'll tell you how much they'll pay for it. If they can't pay you anything for it, they'll still take it, and they'll recycle it for you. They'd have a responsible recycling program that you can research and read all about at Gazelle.com. But they have over 200,000 unique items in their database that they can give you cash for. So check it out. I've sold a few things on there and made a tidy little sum and saved some space in the garage. So look at your old smartphones that have been laying around, your MP3 players, ebook readers, laptops, cameras, gaming consoles, all that. Go to Gazelle.com. Type in the model of your used gadget, see how much they'll offer you for it. You can print out a label right then and send it back to them, or you can even have them send you a box with the label, and then you just drop it off at the post office, and they send you a check. They can send it to PayPal. They can mail you a check. They can give you an Amazon or a Walmart gift card. You get a 5% bonus with an Amazon gift card. Or you can ask them to donate the value of your gadget to charity. Kindles, Nooks, and other ebook readers are going for about $100 right now. So it's a great way to get some cash towards a new tablet, new iPad, something like that. Quotes vary by models, so be sure to enter the correct model. Go to Gazelle.com. Use the offer code TNT, and you'll get a 5% bonus on top of all of the other stuff you get. So you get a little extra cash just for being a TNT listener. Go to Gazelle.com/T, or go to Gazelle.com. Use the offer code, bonus code TNT. Time for the news fuse. Hold on to your abacuses, folks. It's time for Sales-O-Rama. Microsoft announced that they have sold 2.5 million Kinects, Microsoft Kinects, in the U.S. over 25 days. Reid Web points out that's more than the iPad sold in its first 60 days. Okay, you with me on the numbers so far? Sony then quickly announced 4.1 million Move controllers have shipped. That means they shipped them to the stores. It doesn't mean they sold yet. What does it all mean? You do the math. I don't know.
I have one quick thing to add to this. If you want to have more than one person playing on the Sony Move system, you have to have multiple controllers. If you want to have multiple people play on Kinect, you just have to have the one Kinect system.
Well, you'd have to have two bodies, though.
Well, that's true. But
so if you have a bodiless friend, that's a problem.
That's true. I rent my friends by the hour, and they come over and play.
As do we all.
The Kinect. Yes. So, bad news for RIM, as JP Morgan Chase & Company will give its investment bankers iPads. The idea is to give them another mobile weapon in their road warrior lifestyles, as well as a little personal enjoyment.
Dmitry Sklarov, once jailed for breaking the DRM on Adobe eBooks, has done it again, not getting jailed, but breaking DRM. He and his colleagues at Elcomsoft in Russia have cracked software used to verify that images are taken with Canon cameras and not altered. Canon has billed the service as a way to verify the originality of an image. Not anymore. They figured out how to make a picture of the Statue of Liberty holding a sickle verified as an authentic image.
All right, people, check your email. You could be selected to help Panasonic test out its upcoming Jungle gaming handheld game console. The Jungle will be a clamshell design with both a keyboard and a touchscreen, but will focus on online gaming. Panasonic claims that they're doing something very different. Sending out samples into a Twitter-mad world is certainly different.
That's different, all right. Intel's Sandy Bridge processor is set to be unveiled January 5th at CES in Las Vegas. CNET reports that Intel Vice President L. Smith confirmed the processor will have special media acceleration capabilities. The capability would make operations involving video, things like playback, streaming, video conversion, much faster, that according to Smith.
Are you, or a Linux hippie you love, worried about Attachmate's acquisition of Novell? Rest your weary beard. Attachmate intends to continue developing the Souza platform and will support the community-driven OpenSUSE project.
Yay.
The company has also confirmed that it has retained the Unix copyrights, the intellectual property, at the heart of the SCO dispute.
As long as SCO doesn't get them. The long national rumor trail of Google buying Groupon continues as All Things D now reports the price at a more substantial $5.3 billion, and All Things D thinks it could be announced as early as tomorrow. Kara Swisher over there calls it a jobs plan for antitrust lawyers, considering the still pending investigation into Google's acquisition of travel data firm ITA Data.
The new WinAmp for Android is coming out of beta, and if you run WinAmp on your desktop, it gives you the enviable feature of syncing your music over Wi-Fi. It also adds shoutcast radio stations. WinAmp is not against doing an iPhone app, but they say Apple seems to have that whole music management thing well in hand, and they'll focus on Android for now.
All right, we're going to finish up. We were starting to run out of time, so I need to answer very quickly. NASA says that they're going to make an announcement on Thursday about something about extraterrestrial life, something about astrobiology. And, of course, a lot of people are running with this and having a lot of fun with it. Start with you, John Strickland. Aliens or no aliens on Thursday from NASA?
I'm going to say that the possibility of aliens is very low, and I recommend people read the Bad Astronomy blog by Phil Plait, who cautions that there might be a little extra hype in this news cycle, mostly because NASA has to boil down these press releases into a couple of sentences and then shoot them out to everyone. And sometimes some of the subtle parts of the story get lost, and then we all get disappointed when ET does not phone home.
You're no fun. You with your sensibility and rational logic. Harry McCraken, aliens or no aliens on Thursday?
Well, I hope it's Martians, but my guess is it's going to be something that's going to be really exciting if you're into this stuff, and a letdown if you were expecting Marvin Martian.
Yeah, no, I think you're probably right.
There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom.
No, you're right. The Phil Plait's article, like you said, John, is very good on this. It says this is the normal way for NASA to do what are considered interesting scientifically, but not very headline-grabbing announcements because they're published in journals, and so you have to wait until the journal publishes before you can make the announcement, but they want the press to come and cover it, so they have to give them enough to go on, and it always causes some misunderstanding. Really quickly on the calendar, Verizon will be hosting a news conference tomorrow at noon to discuss their launch plans for 4G LTE service. We'll hear more about that tomorrow. Google is delaying their Google Me, or their so-called Google Me social initiative, until spring 2011. In sad news, yesterday, Sir Maurice Wilkes, a father of British computing, one of the guys who worked on computers in the 40s, passed away. The Dell Venue Pro made a brief appearance on Dell's website today. It was priced at $150 and set for a December 14th launch, but you know what? The page is gone now, so who knows if that's true at all. And, of course, if you would like to be on Tech News Today, or if you would like to help us pick the best moments of Tech News Today this year, go to bit.ly/TNT Holiday 2010, and you can find all the ways to do that. Finishing up with an email to TNT@twit.tv, Anthony Everett wrote in and said, in regards to your story on episode 126 about Microsoft offering a TV service or streaming cable service, in Australia, Xbox is now offering almost complete streaming of our Foxtel cable satellite pay TV service. Channels are offered in bundles. Pricing is very competitive when compared to a standard satellite subscription. We also got other emails saying AT&T Uverse allows you to use the Xbox 360 as a set-top box, and TELUS in Canada does the same thing. So lots of folks out there using their Xbox for television. John Strickland, Harry McCraken, thank you so much for being on the show. I know it was a lengthy one and a little delayed, so I appreciate your patience. Harry, let folks know where they can find all the good stuff you do online.
They can check me out at technologizer.com, and I also do a Technologizer column for time.com every Tuesday.
It's great stuff, too. Technologizer is one of my favorite sites. You always have good headlines, and not only good headlines, but stories that deliver on the headlines. And that is rare, my friend, on the online community.
We try. Thank you.
John Strickland from the Tech Stuff Podcast and HowStuffWorks.com. I've pretty much given away your plug, but let people know what else they can find.
I've got one more.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we've got a new iPhone and iPod Touch app. It's the How Stuff Works app, and it actually collects all the podcasts we do, including tech stuff, stuff you should know, stuff you missed in history class, all of the great podcasts. It collects the blogs, it collects articles, it actually lets you check the Facebook and Twitter activity on our various pages, and it has it all in one location, which is brand new for us. We've always had it spread out over various media. So if you have an iPhone or an iPod Touch, download it. It's free, and you'll get access to all of that.
Excellent. That sounds great. Thanks for letting us know about that. Thank you both again for being on the show, and thank you all for watching or listening. You can find us at twit.tv/TNT. Email us, TNT@twit.tv, or give us a call. 260-TNT-SHOW is the name. All right, it's the number, actually. The name is Butler, Indiana. That's where it's a free call. 260-TNT-SHOW. We'll see you tomorrow. What up, Butler?